Human nature loves knowing what to expect. But on the other side of not knowing what to expect and changing is everything that we've ever dreamed of.
How has that been a teacher, and what's your relationship to that been in your own life?
Your inner world is strong enough that when the harshness of life comes to you, which it inevitably will at some stage and multiple times without your life, you have this toolbox to be able to move through life.
Sarah Grynberg, welcome to Adventures in Wellbeing.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. We're here at Aroha, and we're in the lounge. You've just finished your first retreat, so nice to have you and your presence on retreat. Our tagline here is Adventures in Wellbeing, and I happen to know that you've spoken about your passion for other people's adventures and their stories, and in particular, how those adventures and stories kind of shape who they are. Tell us a little bit about you growing up and this kind of early interest.
Yeah. So I always had an appetite for stories and for people's journeys in life. And I remember from being a really, really young girl, I was just in awe of listening to what people had to tell me about their life. So I became an incredible listener from a very young age. And I think if you're interested in stories, you have to be a good listener as well. And it would be anything from, being at my friend's house and listening to her mother speak about her life and the work that she used to do and things like that, to, when I was a teenager, being in a taxi and speaking to the taxi driver and asking questions. So to me, everyone has a story to tell, and everyone, like most people, love to talk. 99% of people love to talk. And if you're able to listen to them, you will immediately make friends with the person, because a lot of us want to talk too and we're not listening properly. So I think for me, it was just this curiosity in people's lives and hearing the richness of stories and what people have been through, I found fascinating. And that has intertwined throughout my work for a lot of my life for the last decade.
Including podcasting.
Exactly.
It also sounds like that their stories and how that impacts their life also impacts your life. Is that true?
Well, it more so, even you mentioned that I'd just been on the retreat here, which was amazing, and there was 19 of us. And hearing everybody's stories when we first arrived and getting a glimpse into different people and their struggles, I find that fascinating in a sense that we all have hard things that we're going through, and it makes you a very humble person when you listen to someone who's been through a lot. And the reality is that a lot of people have been through a lot. There's also a part of it that you feel quite a lot of gratitude for your own life. I know for me, like listening to those stories, it gives me the reality of not sweating the small stuff. When you hear about someone who lost the ability to walk and has been able to just slowly retrain themselves, which was one of the stories, you think about something in your life that isn't even a big deal that you were stirring over, and you think, I don't have it as bad as someone like that. So, there is this genuine curiosity in my life now through podcasting and just people in general to hear what people have been through. And I'm a very empathetic person, and I feel that when people talk to me, I can kind of feel and hear their pain, and to be able to share wisdom through the podcast or through the work I do is such a sense of service to me that, I love being in community with people and hearing about their lives.
That kind of allotness that I think we all at some point bump up against in the hardships, how has that been a teacher, and what's your relationship to that been in your own life?
Allotness?
Yeah, like hardness, like the obstacle and the challenge and the overcoming.
Look, I think with anything, the more that you go on an introspective journey and a personal development journey, the more that you're able to get a toolbox of strategies to be able to use when you go through hard times. The allotness, the hardness of life is going to happen to all of us. And just because you work on yourself doesn't mean that that's not going to still happen. But the idea is that your inner world is strong enough that when the harshness of life comes to you, which it inevitably will at some stage and multiple times without your life, you have this toolbox to be able to move through life in a way that doesn't hurt you as much as it would if you didn't have it. So, for example, before I really started to go introspective and work on my mind and the way that I was viewing life and my thought patterns and all the different things, something would happen to me and I would get so shaken by it, and it could take months, even a year to get over it. And now when something happens, it could be minutes, days, half a day. It won't be any longer than that because I have the tools to be able to move past it. So I think we all need to deal with that allotness of life, but being on this personal development journey allows you to have that inner strength.
I know in the book you shared one moment when you were quite sick, and it's almost like it sounded like to me like there was almost like a line where there was like Sarah before and Sarah after introspection or something of that sense. And there's the moment where you're sick and work has been a lot and you can hardly lift your head from the pillow. Am I getting that right? That
Yes,
there was like
yes,
really
no.
like a moment where things
Yes.
really like almost like a wave shifted in your life?
So
Tell us about
I
that.
was working a breakfast radio role at a radio station, and I was producing that. And so it was 3 a.m. wake-ups 5 days a week, and I had a 2 and a 4-year-old at the time. And it was grueling. Like when you do a job like that, you're always on. So, it's not like you clock on at a certain time and you clock off. You have to always be on to be able to know what's happening in entertainment and news and sport. If people, message from the team that they need you at certain times, it's on always. And with that comes a high level of cortisol that just is running through your veins. And that also means that it's hard to sleep because you're always stressed out and you're always on edge. So when you have to wake up at 3 a.m. and then you're lying in bed every night not being able to sleep, it becomes absolutely exhausting, and that resulted in me being extremely burnt out. At that time in my life, I had done no inner work on myself. It was all the external, always trying to grasp at the next thing and the next thing. And it all kind of fell, and the story that you mentioned is I got really sick with the flu, and I called my boss that morning and said, I can't come in. And I went back to sleep, and then eventually obviously woke up and made my way to the couch. And it was that just dark night of the soul that we hear about, where I just thought, I just can't go on being this miserable. I was so unhappy. I could tell my relationships weren't as strong as what they used to be. I wasn't taking care of myself physically, mentally. I was really at this breaking point. And there was that line in the sand where I thought to myself, I can either continue like this or I can make a change. And it was so drastic and I was so desperate that I needed to make that change. And I did. And I just put myself really in every personal development book I could find. I read everything. I started completely changing my habits and the way that I was showing up in the world. You see, a lot of people that are watching today or listening to this podcast might understand what we're talking about and enjoy it, or read a book and get it, but make no changes to their life. For me, I wanted to change everything, and I did. And I changed that much that really after a short period of time, I saw that my life started to change in a good way as well. It was a little bit topsy-turvy for a bit, which is what happens when you change, because things become different. You start showing up differently. People are like, who is this person? It's called the river of change. But if you can hold on, then you see that there's the sunny outcome at the end. And I moved out of that role in breakfast radio and moved into podcasting. And it was at its infancy then. And I actually thought at the time when I got offered the job, oh, I'm not sure about podcasting. And that experience has been life-changing for me. But that only happened the moment that I changed who I was as a person.
Was there a particular thing that stood out as being hard in terms of change? Like, oh, I stopped doing this or I started doing that felt maybe in particular hard with your community? Like they couldn't quite get that you had changed in a particular way?
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest part, I think, was the mind. And that's what I've gone on to obviously study and work as a mindset coach, because I was such a worrywart and I'd worry about everything. And I grew up in a family that was always worrying only for my own safety and my own good, worried that I was driving at nighttime, worried that I was going to be cold if I wasn't wearing a jumper when I left the house. It was extreme worrying always. And so when you're brought up like that, your default is to worry about everything as well. So I'd get an email from my boss at 8:00 at night saying, can we talk in the morning? And I literally, for that whole night and the next day till I got to work, had thought of the worst case scenarios of why he wanted to see me. I was fired already. I was this, I was that. I wouldn't sleep. I'd be driving to work, playing all these stories out that just never happened. And he would just want to give me a new project to work on. But that happened with so much of my life. I would just make up the worst case scenario for everything. And, it's interesting because people say, don't get your hopes up. Just think the worst case, because then if something good happens, well, that's just a bonus. Like, we should not be thinking like that, right? So the mind became this thing that I really wanted to know how to understand, because when we can grasp the mind, everything changes. And so for me, this idea of conscious awareness, which was one of the pillars in my book that I write about and one of the most important ones, was really so needed, because if we're conscious of what we're thinking and we're conscious of what we're saying and our actions, then we're able to make change. The whole thing is, if you don't even know that you're having negative thoughts and you're waiting for the emotion to come, so you just get the feeling of being sad or depressed or angry, you haven't even watched your thoughts. A thought needs to go through your mind to be able to get that emotion first. So if we can watch the mind and we can replace the negative thoughts with the positive thoughts, and we start training the mind, as we know through neuroplasticity, we used to think, scientists thought by age 30 that the brain was set and we're unable to train it anymore. But we know now that that's not true, that we're able to retrain our brain till the day we die. So the more that we're able to shift from the negative to the positive, the more we're rewiring the brain, and that it'll eventually start moving that way. But we need to be watching our thoughts till the day we die. So for me, that was the hardest one. For community, as far as friends and family, I didn't have so much of a backlash or anything like that. I think people probably liked me showing up in a way that was different. But I also really started to evaluate the people that I was hanging out with. And I did move away from some people in my life that I thought I didn't serve and that didn't serve me. And I thought that necessary to be able to make different changes within my life.
You chose to move away from certain friendships and things of that sort. That would have been hard.
It was, but at the same time, I felt very liberated by it too. I've done a lot of talks and also episodes on my podcast about friendships. It's a very popular topic because it's something we all have. And I think a lot of us think that, we knew Nancy since we're in grade 3 because we both had the same letter of our last name together and used to sit next to each other. But, Nancy and I not really have that much in common anymore, but we stay friends because we've known each other since grade 3, but now we're in our 40s and I actually don't really like Nancy, but we're old friends. And when I give talks and I start talking about friendship, I see everyone look at each other like they all have a Nancy that they know that they're mates with, that they don't really not like, because Nancy complains the whole time and bitches about other people, but they're an old friend. So for me, I didn't want that in my life anymore. And, this gets us onto the topic of gossip, which I always like to talk about because I think it's something that we all encounter. When someone is gossiping to you and you're gossiping back, it's a very negative place to be, right? You might feel good at the time and then you walk away and you don't feel good. And I can tell you, there's that understanding in psychology of the triangulation theory that if you're gossiping to someone, they'll most likely gossip about you too, right? But if you stop gossiping to someone, the gossiper's not going to want to gossip to you anymore because you don't gossip back. And a gossiper's not going to want to talk to someone that's not gossiping back. And then you start getting people in your life that don't gossip. And then next minute, you've got these beautiful friends that are aligned to where you want to be or where you are now compared to where you used to be. And for me, that's what I wanted. I wanted people that were going to meet me on my new journey of the person that I wanted to be, not the old person that I was. And I think that's the mistake that people make. They want to make change in their life, but they actually don't change. It's easy, as I said, to go, I understand what you mean, but I'm not going to do anything about it. For change to occur, you need to change. And that can be quite radical for some people, and it takes time. And it's a constant watching of your mind, of the way you speak, and as I mentioned, your actions.
It is hard. Change is tricky.
Hard. It's tricky.
Yeah. I was thinking about the gossip piece, and I think I also noticed that if you don't gossip with somebody who gossips, they eventually also seem to gossip less, to you at least.
Yes.
You're not the outlet for them.
Well, it's boring for them because you're not saying anything back. Like what a gossiper loves is to be able to gossip with someone else that's gossiping too. So it's a dialogue back and forward. Gossiper doesn't want to talk to a brick wall that's not going to say anything. And then it's also reflecting back that the gossiper might think, well, they're not saying anything. Maybe they feel bad, like this person doesn't want to gossip. So then they'll move away from you.
Do you have, this might be a little bit of a nuanced detail, do you have a way of knowing what's gossip and what's not, like for yourself?
I talk about that.
Okay.
So I think, especially in business, when I'm doing a lot of keynotes to business people, and they'll have employees that come, and there might be an employee that's just having a hard time with another employee. You can tell the frequency of that, where they just need advice and they're just telling their boss, okay, this is going on, I don't know how to deal with it. Something like that is not gossip. They're just asking for advice because of a situation. Gossip has this piercing, jealous, resentment-like frequency to it. And I think we all know when someone comes and they're saying something and you're like, the way that someone looks or the way they dress is not going to be affecting you, or whatever it is that they're poking at the person for irrelevant things or saying stuff about someone that that they would never want repeated. There is a different tone to gossip than someone just asking for advice. And I think we all kind of know what that is. So that would definitely be the difference.
Totally. I sometimes think about if the person was sitting right here, would I say the same thing in the same way?
Yes.
That's a tough bar. You're a relationship coach. With that title, is that relationships?
Yes,
just
in general.
Human relationships?
Yeah.
And also romantic?
Yes.
Whoa, bring us into your world. What happens in those sessions, right?
So really, it's just about it's more so relationships in friends and then the person talking about a loved, like when you're a mindset coach, people are going to talk about their loved ones a lot. Usually that is a big part of their life. And they'll talk about things that usually it's a lot of executives and athletes and business owners who I coach. And they're very, go, go, go. A lot of them have experienced burnout. They're very stressed out. And they feel that they're not there for their other half, or maybe that their other half is not supporting them. And, you get all different things depending on the person. So it's just about working with the person individually and, aligning them to where they want to be and working through different situations with them. So, and again, a lot is also to do with relationships, with friendships, what we just spoke about, people that are dealing with feeling isolated, or having friends that they don't really like, or feeling that, there are people in their life that are not kind and how to move away from them and how to deal with them. So there's just, or even family members, there are so many different things that comes up.
I can only imagine the diversity and knowing humans' diversity and how unique we all are. Are there unlocks with relationships that you find you common need to kind of use, or kind of blockages or things that you find with more frequency show up in people? And if so, like, what would be something that we might find in ourselves or work with?
I think one of the biggest things that I find with relationships is that there's the communication breakdown. And it's because people don't listen properly, right? So one partner is thinking that their wife should be telepathic and understand everything they're going through. But when I'm sitting down with the male, they haven't actually spoken to their partner about what it is that they're upset about. It's like people think, well, you've been with me for 30 years. You should understand my nuances and moods and read my mind about everything. But we know that's not true. And for women, they talk a lot more. But for men, they don't. I mean, obviously some males do, but a lot don't. So it's really a lot. I feel like I coach a lot about communication and getting people to actually open up and tell each other how they're feeling, because that's when things start to break down. When you just think that your partner will understand that you're in a bad mood and guess why you're in a bad mood, because they, are watching you 24/7 and have nothing better to do than, analyze your life.
Your eyebrow raise.
So it's actually quite simple things. But it's the fact that communication has slowly broken down. And usually, again, with the people that I deal with, it's because they've got these high pressure jobs, or these, like, if they're athletes, like a very active lifestyle, and they're not there a lot, right? And sometimes they forget that they haven't even said something. They think that they've said something. So the communication for me usually is the biggest thing I find that I'm working through with a client.
Are there tips, like if one finds themselves, of course, I never experienced this, but if one finds themselves having a difficult conversation with someone, what's a hack? Like, what's a break state or something that kind of helps someone in a moment where they notice they're being kind of drawn into, say, a lower vibration of conversation?
I think when you are experiencing something like that, it's taking that time, and this is where meditation is very good. It's taking that time to pause before you speak and really think about what you want to say. And why meditation is so good for this is because when you meditate, you go into the subconscious mind, right? And you're allowing your mind to slow down, because we work from the conscious mind throughout the day. So when you're allowing the mind to slow down, it gets to that space where it can regulate itself, and it's not that crazy monkey mind. And that was what happened for me when I first started meditation. I had the crazy monkey mind that everyone has. And when I found meditations that work for me, I noticed that my brain was able to just have that time to be able to rest during meditation, right? And so then in my eyes open life, through hard conversations, even at the time I remember having, quite young kids, the reaction when something negative happens is not anger or it's not fear. It's contemplative. There's my response. I'll respond. When you don't meditate and you're used to your brain being frazzled and you're working on high adrenaline, things at work are fast paced, the world is fast paced, bang, something happens and you attack and you say the wrong thing, or you do something or shout at your kids, whatever it is, and then you feel awful. And all you start doing is ruminating on the fact that you said this thing that you didn't want to say. So I think for high conflict situations, what you should do is actually meditate, because when you get into any of those situations, you'll see yourself be able to answer and say something that you really mean. And it will be something peaceful and not something that's going to be angry, and you're not meeting them at the level that they're coming to you at. You're meeting them at a lower level that you're able, then they're able to take that step back and really go, oh, okay.
What have been, in terms of meditation, if somebody was listening and they're like, okay, fine, I've heard it enough, I need to meditate. Is 5 minutes a day enough? Have there been certain, tell us about your path in meditation and the signposts along the way that have really meant something and guided you?
So for me, look, if no one's meditated before and you go and do 10 minutes a day, that's 100% better than nothing. I would think that you would want to do at least 20 minutes a day. I know with Vedic meditation, they say 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night, and that can be very hard. I mean, I even found that hard to be able to do 2 times a day, especially if we've got busy lifestyles, we've got families, whatever it may be. For me, I do half an hour in the morning, and I try to really get into my heart, because opening my heart to me is very important. Having the heart and brain coherence for me is extremely important. And I know that as soon as I start my day, it's going to be hustle and bustle. I still have kids that are relatively young and a lot of emails and everything that most people go through. So if I can wake up, the first thing that I do is go into meditation. I don't turn my phone on. It's on airplane mode. And I'm meditating. Yes, I'm listening to a guided meditation through an app that you don't need to turn your phone on properly for, because it downloads to your phone. And then I'm opening my heart. So then whatever's in front of me, I already have that open heart for. And I'm not in that frantic state. So I think if you can get there, at least with 20 minutes or 15 minutes, and you can do it at the start of your day, then that's a wonderful thing. Obviously, if you don't have time at the start of your day and it's better for you to do it at another time of day, doing meditation whenever is better than not doing it. Sometimes for me, if I want to do a longer meditation, then I might have time in the afternoon, so I'll do it in the afternoon. Or I might, have had the most flat out day with work, so I do it in the evening. I'll just do it whenever I can find it. I mean, I sometimes do 1.5 hour meditations. Like, I have meditated for so many years that I go everywhere with meditation. But I find when I don't do it, that really does start to affect me. And, if I'm traveling or something like that and the schedule's a bit out and I'm not kind of used to my normal surroundings, I can miss a day or two and I feel not my normal self. So for nearly a decade now, I've basically been meditating nearly every single day, and I absolutely love it. And it is one of the most beautiful spaces to be in. And, Wayne Dyer had this beautiful quote that he said, when I pray, I'm talking to God, and when I meditate, God's talking to me. And I love that, because there are that many times in meditation where I feel like my higher self has come through and I've gotten amazing ideas. Actually, the idea of the podcast, my podcast, The Life of Greatness, came through me meditating. I had the idea for the podcast. So I have these really great ideas because, as I mentioned, the conscious mind during the day is all go, go, go. And I feel like a lot of the creativity is lost. And then when you're in meditation, it's like you have these most profound ideas. And I always know that if it's come to me during meditation, it's a good idea.
That's cool. Talk to me a little bit about this heart opening part.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned guided. Is it a particular guided practice that you do that has that in the coherence, or do you just guide yourself? And what is that? And tell us what that means. What does open hearted mean?
So with the idea of opening your heart, there's heart math meditations that you can do, and you can find all these online, and there's a gazillion meditations. I sell some on my website that I've made that are 10 minutes, and there's a manifestation one that's 20 minutes, which is visualization. But the idea is that you're going to go into your heart center and be able to open it. And what I do is I start to visualize something in my life that I love. And a lot of the time for me, it's my children. I love them to bits. And I think about a time that they were there with me, something very special and meaningful to me, and I can picture their faces. So it's something that really happened. And I can picture their faces at the time. And as soon as I think of them, I know that I've trained my mind to go there. So then I know that it will open my heart. And some days it's harder than others, depending on what's happening. And it takes longer, even if you're tired, that sometimes, makes it harder. And I've trained myself to go into my heart and think of these images of the people that I love the most in my life, to open my heart. Because when you have an open heart, it allows you to just move through the world so much easier, and the way that you respond to things is so much better. And to me, that's just part of my routine. I love that. I mean, other people might go into meditation and that's not important to them. They want to do some other things. They might just watch their breath, or they do Vedic meditation or TM, and they've got a mantra, and that's, suffices them for that. But for me, opening the heart so I can be more lovable, more creative, more playful. That's just been part of my practice for a long period of time.
So good. And not everyone connects with the heart in meditation, and there is a different different sensation to it, isn't it? It's quite different. I mean, I would even invite people to notice, just in listening to you speak, I noticed as I was sitting here, I noticed my heart shift.
Aww.
And just how like approachable that is actually, if we notice that there is a tension, or there is a guarding, or there is something that's restricting that we have the capacity.
It's funny. Even the other day, I was getting into my heart, and I started thinking about recently some perfect strangers just helping me with some business stuff, like listening to my story and going, I can help you with that, and doing that. And I went into meditation, and I started thinking of like the gratitude that I had to them for doing that. And then that was opening my heart. It's not hard things to be able, but you have to train your mind to think of the things in your life that bring you joy, and go into meditation and go, that was so kind and nice. I'm just going to concentrate on that.
Amplify it, bring it on. Talk to me a little bit about the coherence and what that means, and how you work with coherence. Is there a practice there, or is...
It's basically, what I learned was that the brain and the heart, to have the mind and the heart coherent, is how we're able to create in life. And when I say that, it goes into what we know as manifestation. And so the idea, I've talked to you about it, when we've had chats, I love the idea of manifestation. That's been something, or visualization, I should say, that's something I've loved for a long period of time. The idea that I will visualize what I want to achieve in my life. And I do this a lot with my athletes as well. And it's a very common practice with musicians and with athletes. The idea that you are visualizing the race that you're running, or the violin, practicing on the violin, whatever it is. And they've done scientific tests that say for athletes or musicians, if they're visualizing and doing the practice, they'll be 70% better than if they were just doing the practice and not visualizing. And I'm not saying if you just visualize and don't practice that you're going to be any good either. Manifestation is such a cliche, it's gotten a really kind of bad rap because people are talking about it at a level that, kind of The Secret did, where it's like, imagine this and then it'll come into your life. It's the idea that you need to be able to picture what it is that you want in your life, but also go and do the action to get there. And when you have the combination of two of them, there is more likelihood that you're going to get there faster than if you just do one. So for me, I remember I started doing live shows a couple of years ago, and I was visualizing that for probably about a good 6 months before it came to fruition. And then I sat on this stage, it was last year when I did a show, and there was, 1,500 people in the audience. And I thought to myself, my God, I am actually awake in my dream. I have been imagining this exact scene, and I'm here right now. So it's a beautiful thing. It's something that I've enjoyed doing, and you either like it or you don't like it, but it's definitely a huge part of my practice.
Cool. You mentioned your kids. What has that been like, parenting, and have they been teachers?
Oh, they're your biggest teachers. So I have 2 kids who are 11 and 13 now, a girl and a boy. And it's an interesting thing, especially when as a mother, you're, have your own business, and I'm working really hard and I'm traveling a bit. There's a part of me that also feels sometimes like, oh, I feel bad that I'm not there with them. But at the same time, I've also learned that it's more important that when I am actually with them, that I'm with them, that I'm not on my phone, that I'm giving them time, that I'm allowing them to talk, that I'm listening to them. Those are the things that are important. I mean, I could not work and stay at home and look after them full time and then be on my phone the whole time that I'm with them, and not be with them because my mind is so overrun by anxiety, or, I'm not watching my thoughts that I'm with them, but I'm really thinking about what's happening, next week. So for me, they have been such important teachers in my life for my own introspective learning. What's interesting with children is the older they get, the more you see your own wounds kind of come out when things happen with them. And also the understanding. I did an episode, it was another one of these amazing, amazing 19th century poets. He talks about the idea that your children are not your children, that they come through you, but they are not you. And the idea is that even though in our mind we have this idea of where we want them to be and what they should happen with their path of life, their path of life is theirs and theirs only. And even though we created them, that's all. You know, we can guide them, but we don't own them. And when I recorded this and I talked to the poem, I was thinking in reflection about that too in my own life and how we really do. I probably have thought, oh, I hope that my son follows this path and does X, Y, and Z. He's the eldest. And the path that he's following is different. And I was really kind of probably getting in my mind a little bit upset with that. And then I read this poem and I thought, no, he is him, right? He will do what he wants to do, and he's such a great kid. Beautiful, beautiful boy. And so it's always like that teaching, it made me reflect so much. And I think that having children is one of the greatest gifts that we can ever be given. Like, I know that sounds cheesy, but it is so unbelievably true. To be a mother or a father, I mean, what a sacred gift that is. And as we know, life is so short. I've had the best time with my kids. They're unbelievable. I try and teach them the things that I teach others in a way that they're able to understand, especially when they were younger. I tried to teach them meditation, you know. But there are little things like the gossip thing. I've talked to them, especially my daughter, because I find that's a lot in the female circles. She gets it. She completely gets it. So
you tell a story in the book about intuition with your son, right? About a neighbor.
Yeah.
Do you think his intuition is just his to have developed, or do you think you allowed space for that?
Yes.
Tell us a story.
He is a magical child. And I think really from a young age, he was able to feel things and just, you know, when they say they're wise beyond their years, he is wise beyond his years and has always been wise beyond his years. And when he was, I think he was about 10 or 9 or something like that, the neighbour across the road was dying. And he had told me that night, we were kind of like just looking out at the light that was in their house, and he had said like, you know, I think she will die tonight. And then literally a couple of hours later, I got a text to say she had passed. She had been sick for some time. And I just find that he in life, like even sometimes he listens to me talk and he's 13 and he will give me advice. He's just such a wise old soul. And, you know, I would hope that was because of his mum. But I think some children are just like that. I think, yes, there's like the nurture nature, 100%. But at the same time, I think there is a part of us that are just born older souls, and he definitely has, and he's incredible. You know, I'll never forget, there'd been like a crash or something like that, and we'd driven past and there was like a lot of ambulances. It looked kind of quite gruesome. And I said to him, you know, we should do like a silent prayer. And he said, Mum, I've already done one.
Wow.
You know, and he's just a beautiful, beautiful child. So, yeah, I think intuition, a lot of it is innate. But most likely, yes, if I was the type of person to say, no, you know, how would you know if she was going to die tonight or something like that, and start kind of slamming it down, then it wouldn't foster it to grow even more. That's obviously not the way that I speak to my children, because I really lean into things like that. And I think if any of us do, we allow our children to flourish in that realm more.
Cool. In terms of mindset, bring us into that world a little bit. That's kind of, I assume, a bit more kind of executive and kind of impact focus and performance focused. And what have you learned in those realms that would be applicable to somebody wanting to run
I'll talk to the idea that we kind of touched on earlier, which is conscious awareness and having unwanted thoughts, because it's something we all have. And then I'll speak to rumination as well. So the idea is that you have a negative thought that comes up, and we have negative thoughts thousands upon thousands of times a day. And we know now that 80% of our thoughts are repetitive and majority of them are negative. And once we understand this, we have the ability, as I talked about before, to be able to change it, because our brains are wired to be able to change till the day that we die, as I said, but we need to know how to do that. And the first thing that I teach people is this. If you have a negative thought that comes up, and it might be something like, Lucy doesn't like me. I've got this idea in my head of that. I always say first thing is think of the better feeling thought. So what is it that brings you joy? And we touched on that earlier when we were talking about opening the heart center. So have that positive feeling thought in your mind. It could be your dog, it could be your partner, it could be, a beautiful place that you like to look out at. It could be a holiday destination, whatever it is, but know what it's going to be. So when the negative thought comes up, you move to the better feeling thought. And you may need to do that 60 to 70 times a day when you first start. But the more that you do that, the more that you're rewiring the brain from negative to positive. And then the more it gets used to going into that positive instead of the negative. But you have to constantly, and this is the conscious awareness part, you have to constantly be watching your thoughts. And then again, going on the idea of rumination, taking that idea that Lucy doesn't like me, you've woken up at 3 a.m., we've all done it. Oh my God, they're racing thoughts of this. I say to people, well, look at the thought and test it. Do you know for sure that Lucy doesn't like you? And I can tell you 90% of the time people do not know for sure that this is true. Then you go to the second thing, can I do something about it? Yes, I can write an email tomorrow, I could call her. So then you're giving yourself agency over it in the understanding that there is something that you could do about it. And then if you know 100% for sure that she doesn't like you, she's told you she doesn't like you, then you go into what I call radical acceptance. And okay, she doesn't like me, but you know what? Not everyone likes me, and that is absolutely okay. Again, you're giving yourself space. And once you do that, it allows the mind to settle and you can go back to sleep again. So that's just, techniques that anyone can use when it comes to having unwanted thoughts or rumination.
When I listen, I'm kind of noticing in myself how the practice sounds great and I'm interested and I want to do it. And then it's like, it doesn't actually lock in, and I don't actually kind of start my daily meditation or start, watching my thoughts or start doing some of these things. Are there any methods that you have for helping us to kind of do what we maybe know we should?
The first thing is this, and it's so simple, but, we've been doing a lot of it since we've been here at the retreat, is write it down. And I mean, we do this with work every day. Well, I do it with work every day, and I know it's obviously a common practice. You write down the tasks that you need to do, and then you cross them off. And how good do you feel when you cross them off? If you're not used to doing something, it's a habit, right? If you need to make a new habit, write it down. I also say to people, especially when they ask me about weight loss and things like that, find someone that you can be accountable to. So if it's something like, I want to lose weight, I need to go to the gym, then find a buddy to go to the gym with. Or if you have the means, get a personal trainer. So then you have to rock up at a certain time because you're paying someone to guide you through. But if you have someone there, and even if it is just a friend, then you're accountable to do it rather than, I can start tomorrow, I can start the next week, I can start in 2 weeks. Have accountability. It might be someone that also wants to start meditation. Go to a meditation course together. Do something that's going to make you accountable for the habit. I think that is the best advice that I can give, because if you're then doing that, you don't have the ability to keep saying, I'm not going to do it, because someone else is there with you. And even if it is just a teacher at a meditation place, but you've paid the money to do it, you will go and do it.
And do you notice in yourself that there's kind of a duration to kind of the hard work, if you will? to get the habit to stick? How long have you noticed?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
It's definitely 6 weeks for a habit to start. I think it's 6 weeks to sort of 90 days for a habit to start forming properly.
Mm-hmm.
And like anything as well, even if it's the meditation, because when I first started doing meditation, I mentioned that I did meditations I didn't like. Choose other meditations then. If you really don't like something, then move to something of that realm that you do like. So if you're going to do exercise and you've started running and you hate it, don't do running. There's a million other sports that you can do. If you're trying to lose weight and you've gone on a certain weight loss diet or whatever it is, choose something that will bring you joy within that moment. It doesn't always have to be something you hate for it to work, There's plenty of things these days. There's plenty of good ways to eat great food if you want to be a healthier person. So I think we have these negative connotations when it comes to I've got to start something new and it's going to be bad. It's sometimes the best place that you'll ever find yourself. So, it doesn't always have to be something that you don't like for it to work.
Mm-hmm. Totally. You talk about the idea that we have everything that we need within us. Orient me to the balance around that. And of course, then, the great teachers that you may have had in your life and how that mix plays out. And in a moment of need, how do we access that? When things are hard or you're, having that dark night of the soul or something that's really feels difficult. Is there a way to access that, everything that we have?
Yes. So I think the idea, and especially what I talk to, is that everything we need is inside of us, and I talk about it in the book, is that the pillars of leading a great life, we've spoken about conscious awareness, there are other ones in there, forgiveness, kindness, there's a heap of different ones. The idea that they're inside you already, but you need to be able to seek out the knowledge. So, we're obviously having this discussion today, and people will be able to take things from that and make changes within their lives, or they can read a book. But what I'm saying is a lot of the time you don't need to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on some shiny thing to be able to make great change in your life. You just need to understand what's inside of you already to be able to use it. So if it is conscious awareness, we've talked about ways in which you can change the mind to be able to facilitate that. As I mentioned, one of the pillars is kindness, and that doesn't cost us anything. There are small acts of kindness that we can do every day. And, I wrote a Substack article about this the other day because it was so beautiful. I was on a train with my family and we were going to the football, and there was this gorgeous boy who would have been 15 or 16, and he just got up from his seat to give me his seat because it was a packed train. And I was so taken aback and just thought that was the most divine thing. And he really honestly made my day. And then as we got off the packed train, his dad was kind of further away, and I could see he was walking in front of me, the boy, and I could see his dad walked up to him, and his dad put his arm around him and just kind of, gave him the biggest squeeze and cuddle. And I could see how proud his dad was because he had given me the seat. And in that sheer little act of kindness, he not only made my day, but he made his dad's day too. So this is the idea that these things that we have to lead a great life and to help others are already inside of us. We just sometimes need to read a book or listen to a podcast or be re-inspired by a talk or whatever it is to be able to know how to use it properly. I mean, even that's the role of a psychologist or psychiatrist, right? To be able to talk to someone to give us the tools to be able to then lead a greater life. But what we need already is there.
It's so cool because I imagine the kid even feels good. When we do something kind, it just feels good, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Especially if it's by choice, Thank you so much for being here today. I want to ask for one last question. So if somebody were listening today and they were inspired and they wanted to wake up tomorrow and put to work this lever of change, what would be a question that we could leave people with that might orient them in a positive way for change in their own lives?
I think it goes back to the idea that for change to occur, you need to change. you know, we do this from a work perspective as well. Like, what is the pie in the sky? Like, if you see someone who's illuminated the path for you, because there's always great people out there that have illuminated the path, be inspired by them and allow what they have done to allow you to also maybe want to change. Like, you might love a historian that has done some amazing things, or maybe it's your teacher that you just look up to and think she's a great person. You know, she's so kind, she's so giving. That's inspiring enough to be able to make change. So I think change can be difficult, but to also understand that on the other side of change is everything that we've ever wanted. You know, when we're in the old rut and the bad habits, it's repetitive. We know what to expect, and human nature loves knowing what to expect. But on the other side of not knowing what to expect and changing is everything that we've ever dreamed of. So in the knowledge of that and looking towards the people that we find inspiring, I think that's enough to allow people to want to make good in their life and to want to be the best versions of their life. And you might also just think your life's really great as it is, and there's a few little tweaks you want to do. And that's good for you. And other people might just want a drastic change because they feel that everything is not great and they're not the best version of themselves. But whatever it is for you, just making those small little changes, I can tell you, is going to get you so much further than not.
Thank you.
Thank
Sarah,
you.
thank you for writing. Thank you for creating. Thank you for doing all your good work. Yeah.
Thank you.
So nice to
Thank
have you on
you
the
for your
podcast.
questions.
Of course.